Hey, everybody. Glad to be here with you all tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. So glad that you're here. And yeah, let's jump right into it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. So glad to be here with all of you tonight. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. The way we're going to do this is just the same way we always do it. First, opening remarks. Then from there, the roll call, where I call you all out as I see you. We do names and locations. That's always a lot of fun. Then after that, I answer your questions for the remainder of the night. So there's something you would like me to talk about in the second half of our program. All you need to do is, if you're on Rumble, it's very easy. You just send me a Rumble rant. If you are on YouTube, it's a little more complicated because we're not monetized on YouTube. If we're on YouTube, we need you to Cash App me. So questions can be sent via Rumble rant on Rumble or to Caleb Moppin 22 on Cash App. Those are the two ways that questions can be sent. And the second half of the show is always really awesome because you ask me good questions. Ask me some good questions tonight. Get me talking. That is always pleasurable. When you all get me talking, pitch me a softball and I'll blow it out of the park. Pitch me a hard ball or a curveball and I'll still blow it out of the park. Right? Get me talking. That's what I would like you to do. So that's the second half of the show. Couple announcements. If you are in the Los Angeles area, it's up in the air. There's a chance I might be still going to LA on May 24th. There's some details that are being worked out. Hopefully I'll be in LA on May 24th. There's still some things I have to, life can be unpredictable sometimes, but it's looking like I'll be possibly in LA on May 24th. So California people, keep that in mind. But the big thing that we're focused on is July. Our July convention is coming up. And every day I'm calling people and it's very exciting. And I booked some plane tickets for some speakers already, and a lot is happening. This will be the biggest anti-imperialist event of the year. We have rented the Midwest Conference Center in the Chicago area near the Chicago O'Hare Airport. It's going to be absolutely tremendous. And we need you there. We need you to attend because it is going to be astronomically awesome. Anti-imperialist speeches, music, presentations, etc. It's going to be great. So we would really love to have you there. So if you could make a point of being there, that would be awesome. There's a link down below to register for the event. We'd love to have you attend. It's going to be absolutely awesome. So it's the big event, as Timoshenko is saying, and he understands it well because he's working to help us build it. Out in Missouri, he's working with people. We got people in Kentucky. We got people in Minneapolis. We got people going around the city. We got books being distributed. We got all kinds of stuff happening. There's a lot of energy in CPI right now to build this event, and I'm quite excited about it. So please make a point of being there. It's going to be really, really great. So on that note, we will just jump right into tonight's presentation. My opening remarks. Keep in mind that if you want to send a question, questions can be sent via Rumble Rant on the Rumble, or they can be sent to Caleb Maupin 22 on Cash App. Those are the two ways we'll take questions for the second half of the show. So on that note, folks, before I jump in to it, I did want to mention, I have written a number of books, and lately I've been compiling. I've written a lot of articles over the years on some key topics. I've been compiling different things. The latest book that I wrote that is new material is the one I've been reading on these streams, Khrushchevism, A Study in Psychological Warfare. It's about Khrushchev and Stalin and the secret speech, all kinds of stuff. However, the latest book that I've published, which is a compilation of a number of articles I've written over the years about, the fake left and regime change wars, is this: The Regime Change Industry, the Woke Left, Samantha Power, and the Deep State. And that cover is already sparking controversy. As you can see, a bunch of rainbow flags with cruise missiles flying above them. And it's about how the woke activist sphere is tied in with the drive for war and regime change, and how the two are connected. So, yeah, that's basically what we've got here. And it's about how the two are connected. So just throwing it out there, it's caused a lot of controversy so far. But it's important, it's an important topic. And people are liking it. People are sharing the cover. It's provocative. And that's what you got to do. We got to provoke the conversation. And there is definitely a link between woke activism and regime change wars. And, I was in Samantha Power's presence at the United Nations many times when she was the UN ambassador. And I actually studied her background and how she became the UN ambassador, how she went from being a baseball, she was a child born in Ireland, to eventually working for a baseball team, to eventually becoming a regime change propagandist, to eventually serving in the Barack Obama administration. And, for my Kamala Harris book, I did quite a bit of research into Samantha Power and who she is, and a lot of things. So check it out. That's what's out there. And as I said, if you want to send questions for the second half of the show, that's the way to do it. Rumble Rants on the Rumble, Caleb Maupin 22 on Cash App. So, folks, tonight I wanted to talk about Shakespeare. And I'm not talking about Shakespeare because I want to be prestigious. I want to know about English literature. Oh, yes, I'm so smart. I'm going to talk to you all about Shakespeare and show you all how smart I am. I'm so intelligent, and you all are my intellectual inferior. Well, that's not why I'm here to talk about Shakespeare. I'm here to talk about Shakespeare because there's a reason people are still reading Shakespeare years from now, years from when it was published. I mean, Shakespeare goes back, before the American Revolution. In Britain, you had the place, what do they call it? It was the theater, but it had a special name. And you had the theater in London where people would pile in to watch the King's Men or the Lord Chamberlain's men perform. And you had Shakespeare, the playwright who wrote it, and it was certainly historic, and it changed the course of at least the English-speaking world and its history. And Shakespeare speaks to a lot of people. And Shakespeare wrote a lot, and he wrote a lot of plays, and those plays and the poetic language that he used in those plays continues to speak to people. And it speaks to people in other languages too. Shakespeare has been translated. People in many languages read Shakespeare. And Shakespeare speaks to aspects of the human condition that are somewhat timeless. And I think that when you look at the Shakespearean tragedies in particular, you can see conundrums, life situations that we've all faced. Going through life can sometimes feel like you're running an obstacle course, right? We all know what an obstacle course is, right? When you're running an obstacle course, right? You run and here's a bunch of tires you got to jump over, and then there's a lake you got to swim, right? We all see that in like military training videos. They got the monkey bars, right? An obstacle course. Life can be a bit of an obstacle course. And the thing about an obstacle course is every obstacle is different, right? A race is just a race, right? You just run the whole time. It's the same, right? A swimming competition is the same. But an obstacle course is where they throw different things at you. Here you got to jump over the tires. Here you got to do the monkey bars. Then you gotta go through the lake, and then you gotta, they have obstacles. Different things get thrown in your path, and when those things get thrown in your path, they require you to react in a different way. That's the point of an obstacle course, right? Is that the obstacle, right? That's something that's in your path. If you're going in a certain direction, and something is in your path, that something is called an obstacle. And an obstacle course is a competition or a race of some kind where they put different obstacles in your path, and you are challenged in different ways to jump over the obstacles. That's an obstacle course. Now, life can sometimes seem like an obstacle course, and there can be situations and circumstances that require different things of you, that test you in different ways. And the Shakespearean tragedies, to some degree or other, are about life circumstances that are not specific to the time of Shakespeare. They're not specific to the lives of great people. They're something that many people can relate to in terms of daily challenges, in terms of relationships with other people. And I have always particularly appreciated the tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. So the story of Hamlet, for those of you who may not be familiar, and if you're not, it's okay. And American education is a joke. American education is a crime. And if you were familiar, I really doubt that whatever education you received did it justice. But the story of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, it begins with the prince, Hamlet, the son of the king, in mourning because his father has died. His father has died. His father's younger brother has ascended to become the king. And his mother married his father's younger brother, who is now the king. Hamlet is in mourning for the fact that his father has passed away. He feels betrayed by his mother. He doesn't particularly like his uncle, who is now the king. And in his state of grief, Hamlet is visited by a ghost. And it is the ghost of his recently deceased father. And the ghost of his recently deceased father says that he didn't die of natural causes. Rather, that he was murdered. And that his younger brother, Hamlet's uncle, who is now the king, was in fact the murderer. And that regicide has been committed. The king has been murdered. And it is now Hamlet's duty to avenge his father's death and take the crown for himself. That the king, currently the uncle of Hamlet, assumed the throne illegitimately. And so it is Hamlet's duty to reclaim the throne for himself and to rescue the kingdom of Denmark by vanquishing his uncle. And Hamlet is given this information, and he does not know what to do with this information. He is horrified by it. He was already saddened by the death of his father. He was already horrified and angry with his mother for turning around and marrying his uncle. And now he finds out that it was worse than he thought. It wasn't simply a tragic occurrence, it was rather a crime. And that it is now his responsibility to correct things by murdering his uncle and taking the crown for himself. In order to get things in the country correct, he's got to engage in some rather dangerous, dirty activities that are rather unpleasant. The whole situation is unpleasant. Hamlet, I believe, remarks, there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. There's something just not right. He says there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. And so now he has no choice but to do this. But he doesn't want to do it. And Hamlet begins to give voice to feelings that are rightly called depression. Now, what's interesting is that nowadays in modern mental health, there are many people who argue that what they call depression is biological or physical rather than mental. The mental aspect of depression is an expression of some kind of physical condition. That depression is a lack of drive. It is a hopelessness. It's a paralysis. It's a pessimism that overcomes the human spirit and renders the person incapable of living their life as they would like to, incapable of achieving and working toward their goals, incapable of pressing ahead and advancing, and instead reduces them to a state of not moving, feeling awful, feeling huge amounts of anxiety, and in some cases, the depression can drive someone to even take their own life. And Hamlet is already saddened by the fact that his father is dead, and he's already hurt that his mother has betrayed him and married the father. And then the news from this ghost that says that this was not an accident causes him to become even more depressed. And so Hamlet spends the play knowing what he has to do and putting it off and not doing it. Making excuses, making loopholes through which he cannot do it, until finally it all ends very tragically. Now, there's a woman he's supposed to marry. Her name is Ophelia. And he's supposed to marry her, but he's not doing too well, and he's not feeling great. And at one point, Ophelia's father is hiding in a curtain, and hiding behind a curtain, he stabs through the curtain thinking he's killing the king, and he kills Ophelia's father. And then the girl that he was supposed to marry, she loses her mind after her father was murdered. And Hamlet at one point creates a play, does a dramatic performance. He hires a group of actors to perform a play that so closely imitates the manner in which his father was killed, and he hopes that the king will see it, and then it'll become obvious based on the king's expression whether or not the ghost was telling the truth. And Hamlet goes through all these different tragic runarounds until finally there's really no escaping it. There is no escaping it. There is absolutely no escaping it. He's got to do what he's got to do. But the whole family are pretty sick of him. The whole family find him to be obnoxious. And so there ends up being a pretty nasty sword fight. He thinks he's going to a friendly fencing match, but they've put poison on the swords. They've got poisonous wine. And needless to say, a friendly fencing match turns into a situation where everybody dies. And it's pretty awful. And it's a tragedy. And many of Hamlet's soliloquies, many of the very poetic speeches that he gives, speak to the depressed condition, speak to that lack of drive, that lack of will, that lack of ability to take history into your own hands, that lack of ability to do what you need to do, and that paralysis and hopelessness that overcomes people. All right, there's the famous soliloquy, to die, to sleep perchance to dream, but in that sleep what dreams may come. There's that, to be or not to be, that is the question. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, the goodly frame, the earth seems to me. He just is describing this hopelessness, this depression that overcomes Hamlet. And it's something that many, many people can relate to centuries later. Negative feelings, hopelessness. And the moral of the story seems to be that those negative feelings, that hopelessness, if it prevents you from doing what you have to do, if it prevents you from finding the passion and courage to take on the role assigned to you by history, if you succumb to it, it will destroy you. And the play Hamlet is quite powerful, and it's quite long, 5 acts. I think a standard performance of the whole thing is at least 3 hours long. Whenever they've made a movie, they've had to cut it and reduce it because it's such a long play. But that's what it's about. Another Shakespeare play that I've always particularly enjoyed is called Julius Caesar. And it's about how the Roman emperor, and he wasn't the emperor, I guess, the Roman military leader, the Roman, imperator, the Roman figure, the great Roman military leader Julius Caesar, was killed. And the play begins with the Roman senators conspiring against Julius Caesar because they feel that he has too much power. Mark Antony, Brutus, and others. And then they kill him. And Julius Caesar is stabbed to death on the floor of the Roman Senate. And then they have a memorial or a funeral for Julius Caesar, where the population, the Romans, are outraged and they're rioting. The mobs of Romans are angry that Julius Caesar has been killed. They have a funeral for Julius Caesar, where the various men who killed Julius Caesar get up and praise him, despite the fact that they killed him. And then Rome deteriorates into civil war. And there's a civil war that tears apart the empire. And I like the play Julius Caesar by Shakespeare, but I particularly like it because I read a book that is actually quite critical of the play, that tells history from a different perspective. But yet, I can still appreciate it. There's a very good book written by Michael Parenti, the Marxist academic. He's written many books about U.S. foreign policy, many books about socialism, etc. But he wrote a book called The Assassination of Julius Caesar, A People's History of Ancient Rome. I have it somewhere. It's on the shelf somewhere. And that is really one of the best books I ever read, because that book argues that the reason Julius Caesar was murdered was because he was a Bonapartist. He was a populist, that he was a fighter for the common people of Rome, and that the people who killed Julius Caesar were the wealthy landowners and the senators. And he shows that Julius Caesar enacted all kinds of progressive reforms on behalf of Roman working people, and that Julius Caesar had gone to great lengths to provide education, to build libraries, to give working people access to the law books, to empower working people. He taxed the rich people and used the money to create public works. And he had even developed a land redistribution program where he was going to distribute some of the land of the rich and powerful Romans. And furthermore, beyond that, here it is. Here's the book. Beyond that, this is the book. Great book. Amazing book. Beyond that, Julius Caesar wanted to grant citizenship to the people of other city-states throughout the Roman Empire. He wanted to make the Roman Empire not centered around one city, but he wanted to give the vote to people in Athens, to people in Carthage, to people in Alexandria, and all the cities throughout the Mediterranean. And he figured that the way to make the Roman Empire sustainable was by making it multipolar. That having the whole empire, the whole world just, sending wealth into one mighty city, that was not a sustainable model. But if Athens and Carthage and Alexandria and all these different city-states, if they had some skin in the game as well, and they would benefit from economic prosperity, that would make the Roman Empire more sustainable. And he hired unemployed workers, pipe fitters, bricklayers, and others, and sent them throughout the empire and sent them to different cities to help them build and pave their roads and build buildings, etc. And he understood that the Roman Empire, as it existed, was not sustainable. Right? Now, if you want to ask a question, there are two ways to ask a question. So I take questions as Rumble Rants, or you can cash at me at CalebMoppin22. And Julius Caesar, by being a champion of the common people of Rome, by taxing the rich, by trying to enact policies, he was fighting for the common people, and he was doing so in a way that would make the Roman Empire more sustainable. However, it was a temporary inconvenience to the rich, and it cut into their profits, it cut into their power. And so they conspired and stabbed him to death and murdered him. And Michael Parenti is very critical of the Julius Caesar play, because he sees the Julius Caesar play as the Shakespeare play as presenting the Roman people who supported Julius Caesar as a mob of ignorant rabble, of repeating the line that Julius Caesar was a dictator, was becoming a dictator. And it does to some degree, except it's pretty clear that the Shakespeare play is not portraying the assassination of Julius Caesar as a good thing. At the beginning, all the Roman senators, who are the protagonists, the play is really about Brutus, the friend of Julius Caesar who betrays him. But Mark Antony is a character, Cassius, others, right? They're all characters in it. And at the beginning, they kill Julius Caesar, And then they spend the rest of the play saying, was it the right thing? Was it worth it? And the answer is no. The answer is no. That as much as they hated Julius Caesar, he, despite his flaws, was holding Rome together. And that by killing Julius Caesar, they created and opened the door to more instability and more chaos. There's a line, particularly in the Shakespeare play about Julius Caesar, where they point out, they're discussing, was it the right thing to kill Julius Caesar? And they point out that the worship of Julius Caesar, the obedience to Julius Caesar, that wasn't all Caesar's fault. And the line is, the fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves, who are underlings. Meaning that, all the people that bowed before Julius Caesar, all the people that fanatically believed in him, they have plenty of guilt in any alleged authoritarianism that Julius Caesar carried out and any alleged power grab that he had, right? The fault is not in our stars, but in ourselves, who are underlings. And that when you look at the play Julius Caesar, and when you read Michael Parenti's book that makes a leftist, populist, anti-imperialist case for Julius Caesar, what you get is an understanding that there is a deeply contradictory aspect of the human spirit. We love authority and we hate authority. We love the government and we hate the government. We love our parents and we hate our parents. You can't live with them and you can't live without them. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. And that as much as all of us would love to have a great leader running our country, if we had one, we would hate him. We would think he was an authoritarian. We would think he was a tyrant. And as much as we complain about the government that currently exists, if it was replaced with chaos and instability and mob rule and etc., we would have something much worse. And that there is a contradictory aspect of humanity and our relationship to all authority and all power. We hate our parents, we love our parents. We hate the government, we love the government. And that this is an aspect of the human experience that kind of defines us all. And that's what Shakespeare was getting at. And that while he follows the standard way, and this is what Michael Parenti talks about in the book, history is written by the victors, but more importantly, it's written by those who had, reading and writing. And back then there was no printing press, those who had scribes. And history that is written by the Roman historians speaks of Julius Caesar in a rather negative way. And it speaks of the poor people, the proletarians who loved Julius Caesar. It speaks of them in a rather vulgar way. They're dirty poor people, etc. Right? They're vulgar, ignorant mobs that support Julius Caesar. But that history is written by the rich and powerful. And that Shakespeare based his play on what was written at the time. And yet, I don't read Shakespeare's play as entirely positive on the murder of Julius Caesar or entirely negative on Julius Caesar. I don't see it that way at all. I don't see it that way at all. I see it as recognizing that Julius Caesar was a complex figure, but more importantly, recognizing that killing Julius Caesar led to more instability. Now, there are historians who look at the context in which Shakespeare wrote the play about the murder of Julius Caesar. And they argue that it was about fear that when Queen Elizabeth left the throne without an heir, that there would be a civil war in Britain. And that was their fear, was that that with Queen Elizabeth no longer on the throne, she wouldn't have a rightful heir, and the result would be instability in Britain, and that Shakespeare was warning about the danger of a house divided, the danger of a struggle for power with the throne vacant. That's what Shakespeare was alluding to. And I think that's an important message as well. And I have written a lot about Julius Caesar. I've written a lot about the Roman Empire. Last night we talked for quite a long time about the Roman Empire, and how it's like an example of an Atlanticist civilization, like the British Empire, like the modern U.S. globalist imperialist system, an empire based on controlling the trade routes, etc. And we've talked about that. But I want to talk about something else, which is that I had an uncle who was a theater professor. My uncle had a heart condition called Marfan's syndrome, which is a very serious heart condition that you're born with. It's genetic. And as a result of it, he had very long arms. And he had extreme health difficulties. And ultimately, he died at the age of 45 when I was 11 years old. And my uncle was very much my hero. I looked up to my uncle because he was somebody in my life who was somebody who went out and did things, right? He had a very short life expectancy because of this disease. But yet he had done amazing things. He had biked around the world on a recumbent bicycle, right? Because he couldn't ride a regular bicycle. He couldn't hunch over. It was bad because of his heart condition. So he rode what you call a recumbent bicycle, where you're leaning backwards. And he got the company that made recumbent bicycles to sponsor him, literally circling the planet on a recumbent bicycle. My uncle taught acting classes in Burkina Faso, the country that now is, headed by a great anti-imperialist leader, Ibrahim Traore. In the 1990s, my uncle was in Burkina Faso doing theater workshops and, working with Africans who wanted to go into acting and theater and film. And he was doing, theater workshops with them while he was in the nation of Burkina Faso. And my uncle was my hero when I was a kid. And he lived in Evanston in Chicago. He was a professor at DePaul University in Chicago. He taught at some other schools as well. And when I went to visit him in Chicago, it was, I lived in a really, really small rural town. But when I went to visit my uncle, he lived in a city with people that were involved in theater. He was friends with movie directors and movie producers and writers, and it being around my uncle was very, very and much an inspiring thing for me. And he seemed alive in so many ways. And when he died, I was very devastated by his death. But what inspired me about my uncle was that he was the kind of person who did things. He was the kind of person who, if you presented an opportunity to him to go around the world, he did it. If you presented him an opportunity to learn about a topic he didn't know about, he did it. He was always looking to expand his knowledge and expand his ability. And he lived a very exciting life before dying at the young age of 45. And he touched a lot of people and influenced a lot of people. And that kind of gets me back to Hamlet, because he taught me a lot about Shakespeare. Being a theater professor, I, was in his presence many times as he was explaining to me about Shakespeare plays. And I think about Hamlet. And I think about what Hamlet was struggling with, that depression that inability to do what you need to do, that inability to take the opportunity that is presented to you, that inability to muster the courage to go out and take risks. Because I got to tell you, it is not easy. It is not easy in this world. It is not easy. There are a lot of challenges. There are a lot of difficulties. There are a lot of setbacks. And yes, there's no way around it. If you go out and put yourself out there, you will fail at some point. If you go out and you put yourself out there, you will be disappointed at some point. If you go out and you put yourself out there, you're going to have your heart broken. If you go out and you put yourself out there, you are going to, at some points and on some days, regret it. However, if you don't go out there, and if you don't keep plugging away, and if you don't keep reaching out and seizing the opportunities that are presented to you, you don't do that, you won't succeed either. It's funny. I think I had a minister who at one point talked about gambling, right? And why gambling was a sin. And he talked about how the reason that gambling is a sin in the Christian religion, it's not because it's wrong to take risks. It's not because it is wrong to enjoy the thrill of not knowing the result. It's not because it's wrong to gamble, but it's wrong to gamble with money. Because gambling with money is frivolous. Gambling with money is cheap. Gambling with money produces no real value. It's a way to pass the time. It's addictive. It's compulsive. Destroys families. It's not a good thing to do, gambling. Gambling with money, not a good thing. Not a productive way of doing things. You might think it's classy. The casino might look really nice and have flashy lights, but it's not good. Gambling with money is not productive and it's not healthy. And I can tell you how we can know that. You know, you want proof that gambling is not productive and not healthy. Go to Detroit. Go to Cleveland. Go to Pittsburgh. Go to all the industrial cities of the heartland of America. They're always falling apart. Living standards are going down. The good paying industrial jobs are gone. The steel mills are gone. The auto plants are gone. And they always have some brilliant idea. Open up a casino in the middle of the city. That'll fix it. I went back to Cleveland for the Republican National Convention. I hadn't been in Cleveland. 2016, the Republican Convention was in Cleveland. I went there to cover it as a journalist. I hadn't been in Cleveland since 2010. And when I got to downtown Cleveland, by Jove, by golly, they had built a gigantic casino in downtown Cleveland. And that just fixed it right up, right? Cleveland's just doing great these days, right? That brought back all the jobs. And are you kidding me? You know, in Detroit is a city that has suffered economically, and there's a lot of suffering, and they've built a gigantic casino in Detroit. And has it fixed things? Has it made life better? And that, you know, gambling doesn't produce real value. It doesn't. However, if you want to produce things that do have real value in this world, you have got to take risks. You've got to make sacrifices. You got to grab the bull by the horns. And you got to go out and push. And you got to go out and get shot at. And you got to go out and endure ridicule. And you got to go out understanding that people are going to hate you. understanding that there's going to be opposition that you face. And you have to go out and you have to say, I am going to do what I got to do. I have got a purpose. And you've got to fight back against the forces that hold you back and hold you in. And you've got to not surrender to the part of you that says, oh, there's no point. Oh, it's all just, you've got to push back. It requires a spark of energy to really change the world. But it's not a spark of energy that I can give you. And it's not a spark of energy that you're going to get from reading a book. It's not a spark of energy that you're going to get from intellectually discussing it with your buddies. It's a spark of energy that can only come from within. You have to find it. You can cultivate it. You can learn different ways of being to let your light shine. But in order to let your light shine, you have to make a choice. You have to say, I will not surrender, and I will let my soul light on fire. You have to push back. You have to not become Hamlet. You have to not be consumed by the darkness. And you have to make that choice. No one can make that choice for you. And it's very easy to be depressed in our time. It's very easy to be hopeless in our time. It's very easy to embrace the lassitude and paralysis of our society. It's very easy to turn into Hamlet. There's all kinds of pessimism everywhere, oozing from your phone, oozing from your TV, oozing from everything. They don't want you to build and construct. They don't want you to reproduce and have children. They don't want you to make people optimistic. They don't want you to connect with other people. They want you to live in a pod and eat bugs and consume their poison from your phone until you are completely consumed and eroded. That's what they want to do. And they're desperate at this point to save their system by driving humanity back into the pit. They're anti-human. And one thing they cannot stand is people like Ibrahim Traore, a powerful, popular leader who's building agricultural expansion projects, who's enabled an African country to launch its own electric car brand, who's enabled the people of Burkina Faso to lift their heads up with pride. That's why they cannot stand Ibrahim Traore. They want to get rid of Ibrahim Traore for the same reason that the Roman senators wanted to get rid of Julius Caesar. He points to multipolarity. He points to empowering people to march us toward a world that is sustainable, with growth happening not just in Wall Street and in London, but growth happening on the African continent, growth happening in Asia, growth happening in the Russian Far East, growth happening all across our hemisphere in South America. That's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of those who can use whatever ability they have, whatever bravery and whatever boldness they have to push forward, and to awaken people, and to take the bull by the horns and demand better from this world. And that's what they're afraid of. They don't like that. That's unforgivable in their eyes. If you can awaken humanity, if you can help people find their inner strength and power, they are afraid of that. They're horrified by that. And that's what they're always going to try to silence. And I am way past, let me just throw this out there. I'm way past what you call yourself. There are Christians who are doing evil and working for evil right now. There are Christians who are doing good and are working for good right now. There are Jews that are doing evil and serving evil right now. There are Jews who are doing good and serving good. There are Muslims that are doing evil and serving evil. There are Muslims that are doing good. And there are capitalists that are doing good and serving good. And there are capitalists that are serving evil. And there are communists that are doing good and building and constructing. And there are a lot of people wearing the red flag and wearing the label of communism that are doing evil. And I'm done with that. I am done with labels. I don't want anyone to judge me by a label. I don't go around shouting I'm a Christian. I don't go around shouting I'm a Jew. I don't go around shouting I'm a Muslim. I don't go around shouting I'm a capitalist. I don't go around shouting I'm a communist. I go around with a message. And my message is we must empower humanity. My message is we must build, we must construct, we must push forward, and we must not be consumed by the lassitude that these dark forces need to save their system. We've got to fight back and we've got to push back. That is what my message is. And call it what you will. Call it whatever you want. We call it innovationism, and that's what we're calling what we're about. We want to do good, and we want to help you do good, and we want to bring light into the world, and we want to bring light into your life. And that's what we want to do. But if you look at Hamlet, the tragic Prince of Denmark, who knew the truth but couldn't handle it, who knew what history had chosen him to do and couldn't do it, and how everything went to pieces because he couldn't take the bull by the horns. He couldn't push back. He couldn't find the spark, the inner light within himself. Hamlet is the opposite, is the exact opposite of all the great people in history. Hamlet is the opposite of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hamlet is the opposite of Malcolm X. Hamlet is the opposite of Eugene Debs. Hamlet is the opposite of Alexander the Great. Hamlet is the opposite of Julius Caesar. Hamlet is the opposite of Joan of Arc. Hamlet is the opposite of what you're supposed to be. Hamlet is one who couldn't be great because he couldn't jump over the obstacles. He couldn't face the obstacles in his path. He didn't have the willpower to stand up and fight back and die trying if he had to. Instead, he had the pessimism, the tiredness, the exhaustion, the hopelessness, the lassitude. And he was consumed by a downward spiral. It just got worse and just got worse until it ended in an awful way. Well, I want to give you an alternate ending to Hamlet. I want you to imagine that Hamlet got the message from the ghost and he knew what he had to do. And he woke up the next morning and he looked at the sun and he said, I have been given a role by history. The throne of Denmark belongs to me. My uncle is an imposter, is a false king. And he went and found others within the royal family and within the royal court who objected to his uncle, who could see that he was corrupt. And together they marched on the castle and they seized Denmark righteously. And Hamlet was remembered as the savior of the nation. Wouldn't that be a great play? That would be an amazing play. However, I'll give you another version of it. Perhaps Hamlet found out from the ghost that his father had been wrongfully killed, and he knew what he had to do. And he found some people who would work with him, but it wasn't enough. And he went and he fought and tried to seize the crown for himself and failed and died, went down fighting, or was killed for conspiring against the king. Wouldn't that still be a much better play than Hamlet? Wouldn't that be a much less tragic occurrence? Sure, maybe Hamlet couldn't have won. Maybe he couldn't have righteously seized the throne from his uncle. Maybe he couldn't have actually done it. But wouldn't it have been great if he had shown grit and strength and pushed through and pushed until he gave his last breath and died with no regrets, knowing that he had done what was right, what was righteous, and even if he did not win today, he was right in his soul. That play might still be a tragedy, but it would be a tragedy in which we could look up to the protagonist, and we could see him as a noble figure. It might be a tragedy. That play still might be a tragedy. Hamlet may not have been able to seize the throne, but wouldn't it have been better if he had tried? You know, I've got a book here. This is a popular book. It was written a few generations back. There's a quotation in this book. A quotation that ought to give you chills. The quotation is, "He who does not fear death by 1,000 cuts dares to unhorse the emperor." Think about that. He who does not fear death by 1,000 cuts dares to unhorse the emperor. But I'll point you toward yet another book. I will point you toward the book of Matthew, the book of Mark, the book of Luke, and the book of John. The 4 gospel narratives of the life of Jesus Christ. And all of them talk about a moment in Jesus's life when he sat in the Garden of Gethsemane. Before he was persecuted, before he was crucified, after the Last Supper, all of his disciples had promised to stay awake and pray with him all night, and they all went to sleep. Jesus was all by himself in the Garden of Gethsemane. And the Christian Gospels tell us that Jesus Christ said to God, "Take this cup away." Take this cup away. I don't want to be crucified. I don't want to be killed for my beliefs. I don't want to be brutally persecuted and murdered. But yet, we know that even though Jesus said, "Take this cup away," and even though in the Garden of Gethsemane he wanted everything, he was having a Hamlet moment. He was having a Hamlet moment if there ever was one. We know what happened. Jesus Christ ultimately drank the cup and made history. When you think about the great human beings of history who've made sacrifices, they have been able to overcome the depression, the lassitude, the psychological bars that bind us all. They've been able to make themselves break the rules that we're all terrified to break. They've been able to make themselves endure the persecutions that we're all supposed to be completely terrified of. They all found a way to overcome whatever was holding them back, whatever was restricting them, whatever fear had been implanted in them to prevent them from going forward. They all found a way to overcome it, to jump over the obstacles, to press forward and die trying if they had to. And look, no one said that you have to make history. No one said you have to change the world around you. No one said you have to do that. Nobody said that you have to do what is right. You don't. And you don't have to change the world around you. You don't have to push back. You don't have to put yourself in danger. You don't have to endure great risks and suffering. You don't have to do any of that. Right? You are perfectly capable of seeing the world as it is and watching it get worse and worse and worse. And sitting back and saying, that ain't my problem. No one can stop you from doing that except you. And that's the one thing I will just throw out there. A lot of people love to blame me for shit. Right? They love to say, well, Caleb's always making people do things. I am not making anybody do anything. Right? I mean, I am actually pretty free going. If people don't want to do something, I say, okay, you don't want to do it. Right? I don't coerce people into doing anything. I don't twist people's arms and make people do things. But I got shit to do. And if you can help me get the shit done, I need your help, because I've got a lot of shit that needs to be done. We've got to build an anti-imperialist movement in this country. We've got to stop the march toward World War III. We've got to prevent our homeland from becoming a low-wage police state. We have got to build the movement that this country needs. That's what needs to be done. And I'm going to do it. I am going to do it. I am not going to stop doing it if it makes you uncomfortable. And I'm not going to stop doing it if you don't want to do it. You're free to not do it. I can't make you do it. I'd like to be able to make you do it, but that's not the world that we live in this time. But don't blame me. Don't blame me if you would like to do it but can't find the strength within yourself. Don't blame me for that. And don't blame me if you regret not being able to do it. Don't blame me if you want to do more and can't find it within yourself. I don't suppress people. One thing I will never do, there's one thing that I abhor, and that is the scarcity mindset. The people who say, well, there's only so much spotlight, and so I've got to have that spotlight for myself. That scarcity mentality. I've seen so much of that, and it sickens me. I don't compete, I create. And there are millions and millions of people in this country who need to be part of this movement, who need to find us in one way or another, who need to take history into their own hands and challenge things. And if I were reduced to some kind of childish pecking order within people who already agree with us, that's a guarantee for failure. But since I've been involved in the kind of spaces I've been involved in, and in our circles, I have seen nothing but that in so many different ways. Of people assuming that there is no hope, of people assuming that we cannot win, assuming that we'll never recruit anybody who's not already recruited, assuming that our movement is just this irrelevant group of people. And so it's all just a big struggle of who gets to be the king of this tiny, irrelevant group of people. That's a scarcity mindset. That is a scarcity mindset. And that's the second you take on that mindset is the second that you die. The second that you see somebody else having success and you assume that that is being taken out of what you could have, you've already lost. The second that you're fighting for crumbs with somebody else or lording over some little tiny irrelevant place and using that, holding that over other people to make yourself feel special, the second you do that, you've already lost. Don't compete, create. And what you want for yourself, you should want for every man and every woman. Right? And this is why I am not a communist anymore. Communism has too much jealousy in it. Communism has way too much rage and vengeance in it. Communism has way too much anger and libidinal release, and I'm not here for that. I'm not here for that. I'm here because I understand the objective laws of economics. I understand that we should not have a society where people are homeless because there are too many houses. We should not have a society where people are hungry because there is too much food. Where I understand that human labor is more productive now than it has ever been. I understand that. And that the only reason we don't live in a society of vast abundance right now is because we have an irrational economic system where profit defines production. And because of that, we have a situation where the vast abundance that exists is making everyone poorer and making the economy less stable. Self-driving cars should be a great thing, but they're not, because we have a highly irrational economic system. Technological breakthroughs, improvements in productivity, abundance, none of that should lead to poverty. It should lead to a more prosperous world. But unfortunately, we have a deeply irrational economic system, and we have a state that does very little to organize and plan production and unleash human productivity and creativity. We have a state that does the opposite. We have a state that crushes innovation, a state that imposes degrowth and impoverishment in the hopes of trying to stabilize the economy. And what we need is a government of action that will fight for working families. We need a society where the banks and the factories and the industries and the centers of economic power are rationally organized so that human growth and creativity is no longer restricted by the irrationality of the market. We need a society that invests not in Wall Street derivative ripoffs and speculation, not on a giant gambling casino, but rather in human beings, that recognizes that the source of all wealth is human beings and their creative power and their ability to reinvent their relationship with nature and their ability to move toward a higher energy source, their ability to move toward a higher mode of production, to expand their population, to expand their life expectancy. That is what is beautiful about human beings. We have godlike creative ability. No species can do what we can do, but we need a state that celebrates that and invests in that. I want everyone to have a job, not as a handout, but because I want the productive labor of every human being to be utilized to build and construct. I want every human being to have health care, not as a handout, but because I know if we're going to have a strong, productive society where lots of wealth is generated, we need healthy people to go out and make that productivity. And I think the emphasis should be on preventive care, healthy living, healthy eating, healthy lifestyle, not treating people once they're sick, but creating a lifestyle and a society that does not make people sick. I believe healthcare should be available to all, and I believe everything should be done to maximize human health because human labor power and human creativity is the source of all wealth. And if I want the wealth of society to increase, I need the source of that wealth, human beings, to be healthy. I believe an education should be provided to all for the same reason, not as a handout, but because if we're going to have a strong, productive society, the human beings who do it need to be educated. We need engineers. We need scientists. We need doctors. We need skilled artists and musicians. We need writers. We need people whose ability is maximized by the education that they received. I believe that we should have an economic Bill of Rights, as Franklin Roosevelt spoke about. And I believe we should have that because that is the way to secure that we have a strong economy. Human beings are the source of all wealth, and human beings should be the primary entity through which productivity and growth is cultivated. I understand that the system that we live in right now, globalism, imperialism, the rule of the world by big banks and monopolies, this system needs degrowth. This system needs depopulation. This system needs destruction in order to be stable. I understand that. But I don't think that's an argument for degrowth, and I don't think that's an argument for Malthusianism, and I don't think that's an argument for a new world war and a prison state. I think that's an argument that this system's got to go. We need multipolarity. We need states that engage with each other on the basis of win-win cooperation. We need human productivity to be unleashed That's what we need. We need to build. We need to construct. We need a government of action that will fight for working families. We need to break apart this imperialist system and all its negativity and its war and its impoverishment and its twisted, demented culture and its competitive rat race scarcity mentality. We got to rip that to shreds. We got to unleash human growth to go even higher and higher. We've got to not be Hamlet. We've got to be Julius Caesar. And those are my opening remarks for tonight. And I hope you got something out of it. I hope that I spoke to you and told you that something that you needed to hear tonight on some level. I look at what China is doing with the Belt and Road. I look at the Eurasian Economic Union. I look at Ibrahim Traore. I look at Bolivarianism, and I understand where the world is going. And I understand it's only a matter of time before that sets up shop here in America. And I want to help that set up shop here in America. And that's what CPI is about. And if you want to help me do that, great. And if you can't, you can't. And if you won't, you won't. But I got to do it. And I'm not going to stop. And I'm not going to stop. And I'm not going to stop. And I'm going to jump over hurdles, and I'm going to get it done. So names and locations, folks. Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? I am going on Jamarl Thomas's show tomorrow early, by the way. Brooklyn in the house. Phil High was the first tonight. St. David's, Bermuda. Connor in Colorado, Red Stick. Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. I hope you're coming. Sydney, Australia. Jacob in Wisconsin. Nick in Tampa. Captain James T. Kirk is in space. Israel needs to apologize. Salt Lake City. I hear there's got some great dancing in Israel, right? I'm just kidding, right? I don't go down that rabbit hole. We don't really know. I know the official story doesn't add up, but I don't really know what actually happens. You got to be careful there. But Alyssa in Virginia, Patch in Arizona, Alex in Brazil, Ryan in Kansas City, Deha in Seattle, Gabby in Chicago, Illinois, Dan in LA area now, right? Tijuana, Mexico. Good to see you. Bellingham, Washington State, welcome. Boston, Massachusetts, Noah. Chad in Spokane, Washington. Frank Sturgill in the world's most corrupt city. Damn. John McPeace in Chicago. Very, very good, everybody. Yeah, there was some troll in the chat who was like demanding that I answer his question earlier, not understanding that I wanted to be like Kamala Harris, be like, I'm speaking now. I'm speaking. Kamala Harris, who you probably voted for, she's speaking now, right? I mean, what was he on about? It was like USAID is good or something like that. What the heck was that, right? And I mean, if you want to ask a question, send a Rumble rant, send me a Cash App, WhatsApp, but he wouldn't do that. He just kept, going on and like throwing a fit that I wasn't talking. And it's like, does he think I'm just here to, anyway, Eli from Chicago, Jenny in Cincinnati, I've seen it all, right? The internet is a crazy, crazy place. It really is. And I have seen it all. I really, really have. But if you have a question, the best way to get your question answered is to send a Rumble rant or a Cash App. Send a Cash App to Caleb Maupin 22 or send a Rumble rant. Those are the two ways to get your question answered. No one has sent any questions yet. And so I don't have any questions. I don't have any questions to answer. So send me some questions to answer, some Rumble rants, some Cash Apps. Just give me something to answer. I am going to have to play some music on this stream, which is fine. I like music. Music is good for the soul. There is what music should I play, right? Right. The person might not know the rules. He didn't know the rules, but he was obnoxious. And it was like, there's a certain number of people where it's like, okay, at the end of the day, you have to kind of realize that you shouldn't care. You can't care what other people think, right? That's a big part of it. But like, you shouldn't, there's part of you that if someone's being annoying, right, you don't want them to feel like they won, right? That's a thing, right? And so, like, this guy is like throwing a temper tantrum in the chat while I'm trying to talk about what I'm talking about. And it's like, if I respond to him, right, and he's acting like, well, if I don't respond to him, then he won. Well, no, that's not how it works. Actually, that's not how these live streams work. You know, but he's throwing his fit right like that, and it's like the temptation is to respond to him so he doesn't think he won. Right. And that's the other thing. It's like with Twitter, right? If someone's being a jackass on Twitter and you block them, they often go, I won. You blocked me. I won. Well, who cares if they think they won? Right? Do you look good by engaging with them? Do you owe them a response? I have said this many times, and I said it, and actually Scott Ritter, of all people, retweeted me when I said this. I don't owe you an argument, a personally crafted argument, just because you're on the internet disagreeing with me. There are so many people who like, Caleb, you're wrong about China. Well, I send them a video I made about China. No, I don't have time to watch that. Tell me what it is. No, right? If you don't have time to watch my video, why you want me to sit here and give you your own specific argument? I made this high produced video. I've written all kinds of articles about it, but that's not good enough, right? Right? You tell me I'm wrong about China. I send you a video or an article I've done on this very topic, and you respond, I'm not going to watch this. I want you to just like, no, why would I do that? Why would I do that? I heard a story about a famous boxer. I forget. It was one of the heavyweight champions of the world. And he was in a restaurant, the story goes. And there was some guy was being a jerk and was calling him names and all that. And he just ignored him. And he said, wow, he said, you're the heavyweight champion of the world. Why don't you go? Someone said, why don't you go punch him? And he said, well, if someone was acting like that, to a famous violinist, would they then turn around and play a song for them? If someone was acting that way, to a famous painter, would he turn around and paint a painting for them? Right? Fighting is my art. And so if someone's just being a jerk to me in a restaurant, why would I give them my art of fighting them? And that's a really important point, right? Is that if you value your craft, you don't owe it to somebody just because they're being a dick, right? You really don't, right? I think Jesus Christ also said, do not throw your pearls before swine. That's an argument that has been made before, but it's trolls like that. I mean, why did I owe him a response? Just because he came on into the chat while I was speaking. And it's like, well, I owe him, I owe him an answer. Right. And I owe him an answer. And just because he's there? No, I don't owe him an answer just because he's there, especially if he's being rude. Oh, look, we've got a few Rumble rants that have come in. All right. Yeah, we got two that have come in. That's good. All right. Well, listen, I do need to put some music on, right? But it's good we got two questions to answer. So as I said before, if you got a question for me to answer, send a Rumble rant or a Cash App. I do need to put some music on. But what music will I put on? I think I know what music I will put on, but we shall see. I have oftentimes on these streams played He Never Failed Me Yet, a performance of this African-American gospel hymn by a group of teenagers in Salt Lake City, of all places. And there's an irony to this video in that this is an African-American song. Almost all these kids are white. There is like one person of color in the whole video. So it's cultural appropriation on some level, but in a way they just kind of made it their own, right? And it shows that this is a beautiful, beautiful song that is not from their culture. And they just found a way to just make it entertaining. I actually I've watched and listened to this performance, this in particular choral performance of the African-American spiritual, He Never Failed Me Yet, by this choir in Salt Lake City, a group of Mormon kids, basically. These are all Mormon kids. If they're not currently Mormon, they're descended from Mormons. And they perform very well, I think, this African-American spiritual. And it's a piece that I really enjoy. I have enjoyed listening to this. So I'm going to put this on. If you have any Rumble rants or super chats, send them in. We'll do that when I get back. So here we go. I've always enjoyed that. Something about that. I don't know what it is about that, but I find that performance to be just perfect. I just, there's just something about it I like. I have no idea who those performers are other than, what's in the video, but you know, yeah, I really like that. So we do have a few questions that have come in. So let's answer them. But hey, the night is young, we've been going a long time lately, and that's fine. That's fine that we've been going a long time. No one I'd rather be talking to you than all of you. Seriously, if it's, I'd rather be hanging out with you than anything. So there we go. So, all right. First, we've got Hempcar. Jacob Hempcar says, our government would do that Northwoods docs proved. What does that mean? So I clicked on the link. Pentagon proposed pretext. Oh, right. So he's referring to 9/11, possibly being an inside job. And he's referring to the fact that there have been a number of false flag operations in the past. And he's got a link to Pentagon proposed pretext for a Cuban invasion in 1962. And that there are documents showing that during the early 1960s, this is true, there was a plan proposed. It wasn't gone through with. The idea was to create some kind of terrorist attack that would then justify a U.S. military invasion of Cuba, right? And that the Kennedy administration ultimately rejected the idea. And that is true. I mean, they discussed a fake terrorist attack, a false flag terrorist attack. But on top of that, there was an actual false flag incident called the Gulf of Tonkin incident, where the U.S. government attacked its own ship, essentially, and accused the Vietnamese communists of attacking a U.S. ship, when in reality they didn't do it. And that was the justification for the USA escalating its military presence in Vietnam. You can read about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. There are many examples of false flag attacks that are used to justify U.S. military activities that have actually happened, right? I mean, and that's one thing about how it is beyond me. False flag is just a military term. It's a thing that you do. It's part of the reality of war. Is sometimes you fake an attack for propaganda purposes. So I mean that happens, right? People have been doing that for a long time. And sometimes there are incidents that are very dramatic that are used to justify things. For example, the burning of the Reichstag, right? After Hitler came to power in Germany, and after Hitler came to power in Germany, there was an incident where the German Parliament building, it's called the Reichstag, was lit on fire. And that was the pretext, the crisis of the German government building being lit on fire. That was the justification that Hitler used to round up the political opposition and jail them, to, declare a state of emergency and arrest all the Communist Party leaders. And then their seats in the parliament were replaced by Nazis. And then he had an absolute vote. Now, was the burning of the Reichstag a false flag? It's generally assumed that it was, but we don't know for sure, right? It's kind of assumed that it was, because we all know Hitler was a bad dude. And because Hitler was a bad dude, why wouldn't it be? And that they did try to frame a famous German communist leader named Georgy Dimitrov for it. And he ultimately was able to prove in court. They had a big show trial, and he was such a good speaker and so good, he was able to, trip up the Nazis in their own lies. And he was able to be acquitted. And so but apparently there was a mentally ill man who called himself an anarchist who did burn the Reichstag. Was that guy enabled to do it or something? That's very likely. It's very, very likely, but I have not seen conclusive proof that happened, right? There was a mentally ill man who, I think he called himself an anarchist. He was not a member of the German Communist Party, but he was just, he was a leftist, and he, was he went and, he lit a fire and he burned the Reichstag. And then Hitler went to the burned building and gave a big fiery speech. And then they declared a state of emergency, and then they arrested, and so, the Reichstag fire was, it's a big dramatic thing. You have a public building, like the House of U.S. Representatives burned down, it's the German equivalent of it, National Assembly, or, you have it burned down. You declare a state of emergency, and then that is what is used to crack down on people. And it was that a false flag or not? Well, the point is, it was a really dramatic incident that was used. And that is one thing that many people have pointed out. Sometimes things do happen, but they use them, right? Even if 9/11, let's argue, was not a false flag, they had the Project for the New American Century already written. They had the Patriot Act already written. They had stuff that they were sitting on, right? And that seems to be what the powers that be do, is they have stuff that they're sitting on, and waiting for the right moment for. And that's actually what Naomi Klein's book, The Shock Doctrine, argues, right? Is she argues that, they take, that when someone's in a panic, when someone's, shocked, their ability to resist is weakened. And that, she talked about disaster capitalism and how, free market policies and mass privatizations and neoliberal economics is imposed in the context of a dramatic shock. And the first example she uses is the Pinochet coup in Chile. And then from there, she talks about various places, and many people contest what she wrote about Tiananmen Square in China, and that what was written about the Tiananmen stuff in that book is the stuff about China in that book is completely false, is just completely inaccurate. And, there are things in that book that are contested. I find that book to be a very, very good source. One thing, and it's funny because it's, I find myself agreeing with libertarians more and more every day, even though I vehemently oppose their economics. Libertarian economics, I will argue against until my last breath. It's just wrong. But when it comes to opposing degrowth economics, if you see the government is only imposing degrowth, I can understand why they would want to get the government out of everything. Opposing the police state, opposing the wars. Libertarians are really good at what they oppose, but when it's what they're for, it's this belief that the market just naturally solves things, which it does not, right? But one thing that certain libertarians will point to and certain conservatives will point to is they'll say there's the Chilean economic miracle. And this is one that absolutely drives me up the wall. Is they'll say, well, Pinochet, maybe he was a brutal dictator, but he created great economic policies. His libertarian economic policies worked. That's not true. That's just not actually true, right? Chile, 1973, Pinochet seized power, murdered all kinds of leftists and killed them. And then the economic policies that came were disastrous. There was malnutrition all through Chile. There was mass hunger. There was mass homelessness. There was 30% unemployment. It was an absolute disaster. Chile's economy didn't start really growing until the 1980s, after which, when they abandoned Milton Friedman free market policies, when the military started renationalizing things, right? Yes, there was great economic growth in Chile a decade after the shock therapy economics, but it came when they dramatically changed their policies. And it's like, come on, like, the results of, 30% unemployment, getting rid of the food subsidies, malnutrition. It was a disaster. And then when they changed the policies and the world economy had switched, yes, there was an upturn. But that is something that has always kind of bothered me. And I did get Gabby's super chat. And so, right. And so she sent a link to a video. So I have to click on the link but we'll get to that. I guess we'll do the Rumble rants first. Like we always do. Oh, okay. It's about the drug prices thing that Trump is doing. Okay. Very good. All right. Okay. So the next Rumble rant, what is BlackRock doing in Saudi Arabia or Ukraine? What do you think BlackRock is doing? What do you think BlackRock is doing? Right? BlackRock is the British Empire. BlackRock is like the flagship corporation for degrowth, the flagship corporation for wrecking the economy of developing countries. You remember when they wrecked Sri Lanka by basically, in order to get their loans, they had to start using, going organic and not using pesticides, and their crop output was dramatically lower. BlackRock generally, in order to get loans from BlackRock, they demand that you reduce crop output, you engage in policies that reduce consumption. I mean, BlackRock's stated goal was to reduce the global food supply. I mean, I do not understand how that can be justified, but the Biden administration was openly saying their goal was to reduce the amount of food in the world. I mean, and I would have this argument with people about the Dutch farmers, for example, right? What was the argument there? Well, the argument was that all these EU countries were using environmental laws to prevent farmers from producing more food. And there's malnutrition in the world. And these farmers are saying, no, I want to produce more food. And the government, with its deregulation policies, was reducing the food supply. And I was saying that's obviously wrong. And people are like, well, Caleb, they're right wing. Caleb, some of those farmers are millionaires. I don't care. Do we want more food in this world or less? Right? And that it's very obvious that, and it was blatantly stated by the Biden administration that their goal was to reduce the global food supply. Why would you want to reduce the global food supply? I mean, that's nuts, right? I just don't get it. And it's probably due to the fact that Russia's had a farm explosion, that Russia, is producing more food than ever before, the biggest harvests in its history, the farming boom that Putin has overseen, the fact that Russia provides fertilizer to developing countries like Brazil, the fact that, African countries, that are aligned with China are producing more food. And so, it's like they were trying to cut the food supply. And there was malnutrition issues in Nigeria and other African countries. And then they're just, the White House is sitting there going, how do we reduce the food supply? Insanity. I mean, how is that justifiable? But that was the open policy of BlackRock, and that was the open policy of the Biden administration. And this is why you have to break with the left, right? Before I broke with even the communism label, I broke with the left. The left does evil things. Okay? And there are the ideals of the communist movement, and there are the principles of Marxism, but what you call the left does evil things. Right? Many evil things in American politics are done in the name of leftism. Here's a great example. For a long time, I have heard the Democrats float this idea of the National Service Initiative. And it sounds great. Doesn't it sound great? The idea is that all the young people of America, after they graduate high school, they'll be required to either go into the military or do 2 years of national service, volunteering for the nation. Now, doesn't that sound great? That sounds like Stalin's 5-year plans, right? They're going to go out and they're going to go, work in a poor neighborhood, and they're going to, pave the, we're going to have the young people do something good for the country. Sounds great, doesn't it? It sounds left. What is it really? It's getting rid of postal workers, getting rid of sanitation workers, getting rid of public employees, because you make all the 20-year-olds do their work for free. That's not good. That's degrowth economics, but they frame it in, serve the country. It's degrowth. It's bad, right? The left does bad things, right? That is a bad thing, right? The idea that, that we would get rid of millions of good-paying workers by making 20-year-olds do their jobs for free, that's a bad thing. National Service Initiative is an evil policy, but it's framed as a good thing. Well, shouldn't we do that? Make these young people work for the good of the country? No, we should have good paying jobs. Postal workers. We should have lots of postal workers, lots of sanitation workers, lots of public employees getting paid decent wages. An example of a policy that actually got implemented that was very similar. Barack Obama, he implemented Teach for America. Now, that sounds like a great program, right? Well, if you're a teacher and you go to you go to college, you're going to get student debt. We'll pay your student debt if we send you to a low-income district for a couple years and you're a teacher there. Now, doesn't that sound great, right? We're going to send, we'll get rid of your student debt and we'll send you to a low-income area to be a teacher, except you don't have union representation, except you work for penny wages. You're getting paid fractions of what the other teachers in that area are getting paid. You're essentially a scab. right? You're not a union employee. You don't get health care benefits. You barely get paid in comparison to the other teachers. And instead of hiring another teacher that they have to pay health care benefits and decent wages to, they have you work there, at poverty wages in exchange for getting your student debt canceled. It's an evil program. It's an evil program. Teach for America is an evil program. But it was framed as, oh, this is, and look, having young people getting rid of their debt to work in a low income area, isn't that great? No, actually, it's not. It's not actually great. It hurts the teachers' unions. It takes good paying jobs out of the economy. It's actually a very, very bad policy, but it's done in the name of the left, and that there are all kinds of evil things being done in the name of the left, right? I'm not even going to go down the social rabbit hole, right? I'm not even going to go there, right? You can, if you want to go walk down the LGBT abortion, you do that. I'm not even going there. I'm just talking about economic policies that are framed as leftist, environmentalist, socialist, for the good of the country, that are actually about degrowth. And if we don't recognize that there are those who really believe in the free market stuff, and there are those who have no problem using the state to impose degrowth, right? That it's very easy to get mad at Republicans and libertarians because they put forward an economic philosophy that says the market is always the answer, and it's not, right? And that if we can cut our way into economic growth. Well, we cannot, right? So it's very easy to get mad at them because they say what they believe, and what they say is wrong, and it's easy to argue with. Fine. But Democrats, they don't go around saying we can cut our way into economic growth, and they don't go around saying we can get the government out of our backs. In fact, what they do is they go around inventing ways to use the government and use progressive sounding values to make things worse. And in a way, that is more dangerous. That is far more dangerous. The Democrats, in the name of environmentalism, have done a lot to weaken the U.S. economy. The Democrats, in the name of, national service, help the country, teach for America, they've done a lot to cut things, and they do it in a way where they're appealing to left-wing values as they do it. They're appealing to all these progressive emotions or whatever, but what they're actually doing is impoverishing people. And Joe Biden's policy of trying to reduce the global food supply. I mean, my goodness, how can you claim to be an anti-racist? Who starves in this world? Do we starve here in America? No, right? There's poverty. There's low-income people who had trouble eating. I mean, I'm sure there's people in the Skid Row in Los Angeles living in tents who don't have the food that they would like. But in terms of malnutrition, if you reduce the global food supply, who starves? Tends to be Africans who starve. They tend to be the ones who starve, right? That's where you want to find malnutrition in this world. Go to the African continent. So Joe Biden is trying to drive down the food supply. How is he not a racist? How is he not a racist? I mean, and if Joe Biden is actively trying to drive down the global food supply, and he and BlackRock are going around, demanding that countries like Sri Lanka adopt policies that reduce their crop outputs, demanding countries in the European Union impose policies that make the farmers produce less food. And they're calling the farmers Nazis and fascists when they protest about it by driving their tractors around. You look at that, and so much evil is done in the name of leftism, right? And that is a point that and then you get into the team sports where it's, there's this assumption that the left, the Democrats, are always the better ones. They are not. And I saw through that, and I had the courage to speak against that. I understood that Trump was the lesser of two evils in the 2016 election. I very reluctantly started seeing that, and seeing that the Democrats, when they rigged things against Bernie Sanders, and the left, it's all this team sports. You're a Nazi, you're a fascist. And then I saw what Kamala Harris was really about. I mean, Kamala Harris is really dangerous and really satanic. And that I learned about her father, who she's estranged from. And I wrote the book that, was a smash during the elections. I was on every show. I was on InfoWars. I was on Jimmy Dore. I was on Kim Iverson. I was on every channel. I was talking about that book. We were distributing them at the convention. That book, it shook the world. I wrote it in 2020 when she was first running for president, and it was on the web for 4 years, and nothing happened. And then, the day she became the Democrat nominee in 2024, they banned it, and that caused a huge explosion of outrage. I know at this point that, Trump is awful in a lot of ways, right? I mean, that, the El Salvador stuff is awful. There's plenty we can dislike about Trump, but Trump was the lesser of two evils in the last election. There's no question about it, right? I mean, if Kamala Harris was president, we would have had a nuclear war, and I would be in prison, and so would the Uhuru movement, and so would every anti-imperialist. I mean, it would be illegal to be an anti-imperialist. I mean, already the Kamala Harris pretending, the Joe Biden, administration that was actually run by Kamala Harris raided the home of the Uhuru movement. Already, they'd raided the home of Scott Ritter. It was them who outlawed RT and made it, illegal to work for RT, and, shut down RT. And it was going to be illegal to be an anti-imperialist. I mean, they were just, the Biden administration was basically just going to make it a crime to say anything that they would consider making you a Russian agent or a Chinese agent or an Iranian agent or a Venezuelan agent. They were just going to make it illegal, right? With the Foreign Agents Registration Act, they were just going to make it a crime. They arrested Sue Mi Terry, the top Korea advisor to the White House, alleging that, she was too close to South Korea. And that was because South Korea wouldn't cooperate and escalating against North Korea as they wanted. And so they grabbed their top friend in Washington, D.C., and were trying to throw her in jail. I mean, it was crazy, right? It was absolutely crazy. Does that mean Trump is not doing bad things? No, what he's doing to the Palestine students, that's wrong. I don't think people should be deported for their political views. I don't think that legally, constitutionally protected speech should have anything to do with your immigration status, right? I don't think it should, right? If you're in the country and you're legally here, you have the right to say whatever you want, right? Free speech doesn't mean only citizens have it, right? And I mean, that seems to be the difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. The Biden administration said that nobody had free speech, whereas Trump seems to think only citizens have free speech. Well, I think everyone in this country, citizen or non-citizen, has free speech. That is my view. But that seems to be the difference. Trump seems to believe that if you're a student and you come here and you protest for Palestine, he has the right to deport you. I don't agree with that. I think that's wrong. Right. And he also seems to believe that he can send people to El Salvador without due process. He says, well, they're not citizens. They could be in a gang, so send them to El Salvador. Well, I disagree. We do have the right to deport people from the country if they are involved in criminal activities, but you deport them to the country they came from. You don't find another country to send them to. If you're going to send somebody to a prison somewhere, you have to send them there with due process, right? So there's plenty we can criticize Trump for doing. That said, we're way better off with him in office, right? There would not be negotiations with Iran right now if Trump was in office. There would not be negotiations with Russia right now if Trump was not in office. I wouldn't be here if Trump was not in office. If Trump had not won the last election, things would be very, 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 very bad. Okay. And, that's not a popular thing to say. And, but that's the reality, right? And that, there are good things that Trump has done. Now, I've seen how Scott Ritter and others have pointed out that Marco Rubio seems to be the negative force within the Trump administration. He seems to be undermining Trump's drive to bring peace and negotiate. And that is certainly interesting to me. But anyway, we'll get to the next question. All right. John McPeace says, instead of crying that Putin isn't coming personally, Trump and Zelensky should be honored that Lavrov is going to be there. They should bring their notebooks with them. He has a lot to teach. Well, I've interacted with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov before. I've asked him questions. I've been at events where he's there. He's slick. He's a good guy. I mean, he knows his stuff, and that, why should Putin go there if they're not ready? Putin obviously will be there if they're ready to end this, when they're ready to end this war for real, right? When it's time to actually end this war, Putin will be there. But, Putin is the president of a country, right? And if there's nothing on the table as of yet, he'll get there, right? Trump really wants that photo op with Putin. He really wants to be there signing the peace deal, right? He really wants a handshake between Putin and Zelensky. And, Putin's not going to give that, for nothing, right? I mean, I mean, again, there are proposals that are absurd, right? And if you offer a proposal to end a war that is so absurd, uh, it's not a serious proposal. The idea that Russia would retreat from the republics, that's not going to happen, right? The idea that Russia would allow Ukraine to join NATO, that's not going to happen. And I do see that the Trump administration, to some degree, seems to indicate that they would like to end this war. I really wish they would, be more serious about it and go ahead and do it. That's what I would like. We're not there yet. But, every day I'm just hoping that they will just end the war. That's what I'm hoping for. There seems to be a lot of tap dancing, and there's a lot of different things. Russia's ready to negotiate. They've been ready from the beginning. Russia would have preferred to have never launched the special military operation. They got to the point where they had waited and waited and waited, and they had no choice, and they had to go in. They would have preferred not to do it, is what they would have preferred to have done. Again, I have to show this picture because this is something they don't want you to see. This. The Wikipedia page for this image has been banned, and that's why I have to show it on here night after night after night. This is why the war is happening. For 8 years, children in the Donbass have been killed. You had the Odessa massacre at the House of Trade Unions in 2014. You've had bombing and shelling, and for 8 years, they've been murdering. The Ukrainian government has been murdering the people in the regions that joined with Russia. And Russia facilitated a negotiation, the Minsk Agreement, where they were supposed to stop killing them and let them reintegrate back into Ukraine. And the Ukrainian government didn't follow it, and they didn't implement the Minsk Agreement. And Russia waited for 8 years. And for 8 years, and this is a monument to all the children that were killed during that time, through relentless bombing by the Ukrainian forces. And that never gets brought up. Mainstream media says, oh, Ukraine was a peaceful country until that is not true. It wasn't peaceful for these children. It wasn't peaceful for the people in the Odessa House of Trade Unions who got burned alive. It's like mainstream media just doesn't acknowledge that. So, yeah, I'm sorry. Russia had no choice but to move in, and they did. And when they have secured the protection for these people, when they've made sure that Ukraine is not going to become a base to antagonize and threaten Russia, at that point, we can have peace. And I know that there's a lot of sneaky stuff going on the U.S. side, and there's a lot of maneuvering. But at the end of the day, what Russia wants is pretty simple. They want to not be threatened. They want peace on their territory. They want protection, and Ukraine is running out of people, right? So just end this war. Just end this war. CPI, we have always been, the loudest saying, just end the war. We have been the main voice. Nobody has been more visible throughout the United States, loudly saying that this war must end, right? Some people on the internet, there's certainly been people on the internet saying it. We've been saying it in real life. Louder than anybody, we've been saying it. Louder than anybody, we've been saying Russia is not our enemy. We've been loudly out there in the streets, meeting people, etc., and building a movement. And coming up, we've got the convention that's coming up, July 12th. And I'll tell you, folks, every day I've got a checklist of things to do to get ready for that convention. And, I'm a little worried at this point. There's a lot of things that, there's a lot of money that needs to be raised. There's a lot of people I need to call, and there's a lot that still needs to be done. And every day is a challenge. Every day brings new challenges. It seems the game changes every day. One minute you think you got this, the next day you got this. And, there have been some good developments. I told you yesterday there was a speaker that it seemed like they were going to come, but it wasn't clear. And they gave me 100% confirmation, and I booked their ticket. Amazing. Our musician, Brian, amazing musician, booked his ticket today. He's coming. We're going to have great music for the 7-day workshop, for the program. That's going to be really amazing. Shout out to Brian, our great musician. I got that taken care of. But there's some technical stuff I got to take care of, and there's some new developments. And it's just every day I'm making new phone calls and talking to new people. But this event needs to happen. It's not a matter of my convenience, right? My ego. Oh, you just want to have an event where people clap for you, Caleb. No, it's not that at all. We need there to be a visible demonstration of anti-imperialism. There needs to be a large anti-imperialist gathering in the heartland of America. that urgently needs to happen. And it's not a collection of a gathering just of all of us, but of new people. That's why we're putting door hanger flyers on doors. That's why we're handing out books, thousands of copies of this Houthi book. That's why we're reaching out to different communities. We are going to make this event a real big event. And again, not easy to do. And people are working very hard. And my hat goes off to everyone in Chicago who is working hard to make this the big event. And, it's getting down to crunch time, and we got to just do it. Now, John McPeace says Rubio is Bolton 2.0. All right. And John Bolton, who was in the Trump administration, he was following along with Trump, but the whole time trying to undermine and weaken Donald Trump. And it would make sense for John Bolton to be Rubio 2.0 because they're from the same school of thought. They are neoconservatives, right? They are the foreign policy hawks, basically, the regime change folks. Marco Rubio has been Mr. Regime Change, is a Miami Cuban. That's what he's all about. So the idea that he would, be undermining Trump's efforts to make peace while mouthing the official line, that doesn't surprise me. I didn't skip your Rumble rant. We talked all about false flags and all kinds of things about Cuba and all of that, Didn't skip your Rumble rant, Hempcar. Did not skip it. We talked for a long time about false flags and the Cuban plan and all of that. Did not skip your Rumble rant. Didn't skip your Rumble rant, Hempcar. But that said, we do have our convention coming up. And so I'm just going to put this video on because, we're in the same situation. Things do change every day and I'm talking to different people, but some things are pretty consistent. We do need your support. So here's the video. Friends, how you doing today? I'm letting you know the Center for Political Innovation, we are about to do on July 12th, the biggest event that we have ever done. It will be our national gathering in Chicago on July 12th. And it's going to be really, really special. We are talking with a number of important anti-imperialist voices, a lot of different communities. There's going to be musical performances, dance performances. There's going to be great speeches, and it's going to be a whole day gathering dedicated to anti-imperialism. I am committed, and CPI has always been committed to building an in real life network of people. And we carry out real operations. We were at the inauguration of Trump with our Trump and Kim banner saying only peace can make America great again. We were on the streets of Chicago at the Democratic National Convention with a book exposing what Kamala Harris and who she really is and what she's really about, and it was really, really important. We have 1,000 copies of our book about the Houthis that are being distributed with the poster of the convention on the back to people who would never go looking for this. We are putting door hanger flyers on doors of people, again, that would never go looking for this. We're not performing and trying to make ourselves feel good. We're actually trying to build a network of people that can be anti-imperialists in America. It's not easy to do. It's very difficult in these times to build a real in-life organization. People have their issues. We live in a very strange time, but we have to do it. And we are committed to continuing this project. This video is basically me telling you we need your support. In order to pull off our convention that includes our 7-day program for our members around the country to come to Chicago, includes our huge convention on July 12th, where we're gonna fill up the Midwest Convention Center, in order to have an effective national planning meeting and gathering in Chicago the day after on July 13th. In order to do what we need to do, we need to fill up that auditorium and we need money. And there's really no way around that. We need you to donate to the Center for Political Innovation. We have set up a GoFundMe, and a lot of people have already contributed. We already raised a couple $1,000, but it's not enough. In order to really pull off our July activities and really have a win for anti-imperialism, we need your support. We need you to go to the GoFundMe right now and donate $5 or $20. We need you to go to the donate button on the CPI website and send us $100 or $50, whatever you can do. If we're gonna do what we need to do in July and build the organization and have the mega anti-imperialist rally that needs to happen on July 12th and solidify the network that we're building to continue to carry out the great operations that we do, we need you to help us out. Every cent that we raise goes into building this group. I'm lucky I have a paycheck with everything that's going on. I'm surviving, and I have consistently put a huge amount of the money that I have, my own resources, my own funds, into CPI because I believe in it, because it needs to happen, because this organization is necessary. I'm looking at what I've got and my own resources and my own bills and all of that, and I'm looking at what's already been paid for, and it's not enough. I mean, it's just not enough. I can't just pay for everything myself. We have membership dues and other things, but we need a special gift. We need a special gift to make July happen. We need you to give us a special contribution so that we can make sure the July events go smoothly, that the housing for the people coming in out of town is covered, that the speakers that are being flown in, their airfare is properly covered. We need you to make a special one-time gift to make this July gathering, this anti-imperialist summit that we are organizing. We need you to help us make it happen and help us make it a success. Small gift, big gift, whatever you can do. We need you to help us with it. But you know what? I'll just say this. If it's a matter of send us a gift or come, we'd rather you come. We'd rather you be there. It's much more important that you be there on July 12th. If you can't afford to give us a gift, but you can afford to come to town, if there's one event that you come to this year, make it July 12th. CPI, Center for Political Innovation, we're doing something that nobody else is doing, and we're doing it right. We're not doing it in a way that we're trying to win the internet. We're not doing it in a way that we're trying to make ourselves feel special or act like we're cool. We're building what needs to be built. We are building the real connections. And if you can understand why what we're doing is so important, if you can understand why anti-imperialism is the future, but we have to break out of the narrow niche circles and internet culture and get to the masses of people with real outreach. If you can understand that, please give us a gift. We're trying to build an actual movement to win new people to anti-imperialism and continue to carry out operations to change the conversation in America so that we have a country where there's a mass movement demanding justice for working families and an end to these wars, that we're saying no to World War III, we're saying no to the emerging low-wage police state. That's what we urgently need. So if you can help us in any way, send us a gift. If you can be there on July 12th, be there. This is the biggest endeavor CPI has ever done, and it's going to lead to even bigger things. We don't back down. We don't go away. If we were going to back down, we would have done it a long time ago. And if we were one of their plants or one of these fake anti-imperialists, they would be making it a lot easier for us. We have been facing a lot of challenges, but we continue to achieve great victories. So we need your support. Please send us a contribution. Please be there on July 12th at the Midwest Convention Center in the Chicago area. It's right near the O'Hare Airport. It's going to be awesome. We need you there. Thank you. All right, everybody. So yeah, if you can all do me a favor, go drop $5. Go drop $2 in there if you have to, right? Just drop something in there. Let's get some momentum going on the GoFundMe. Someone gave a really big gift on Sunday, which is deeply appreciated. If that person is watching, thank you. Thank you. But if people could go on there and just drop $5 on the GoFundMe right now, that would make me sleep a lot easier tonight. It really, really would. So please go ahead and do that. Please do that. I am asking you to make this happen. We have to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. I could start bashing what other people are doing, that is not doing this, that is not really helping. I'm not going to do that because, that would be a waste of my breath, but, no one's doing it but us, and we've got to do it. Right. And you know why this is important. That no one's doing what we're doing. No one's putting out an optimistic vibe. No one is putting out a message that can actually get across to people. No one is building events that have the positive vibe that we have. Nobody's doing that. Right. And so we need your support. We really do need your support. And there's just no way around it. If we're going to pull off what we need to pull off this summer, we need to do this. So on that note, I saw Gabby sent a question. She asked me about what Trump is doing with the prescription drug policies. Actually, this is the kind of thing, this is what Trump does well. This is a MAHA policy. This is an RFK policy. And it's based on the reality that Americans pay far more for prescription drugs than people in most of the world do. Prescription drugs are way overpriced in this country, and on top of that, at the same time, Big Pharma has a lot of power, and seniors voted for Trump in big numbers. They're a big part of Trump's base, and they get hit by the prescription drug prices. Seniors are on a prescription drugs, at a much higher rate than most people are. And RFK, who was a big part of the Trump campaign, big part of the Trump coalition, has been very critical of Big Pharma and the way that they dictate policies. And so it looks like Trump is trying to move ahead with something to curb the prescription drug prices that hurt working families and hurt the elderly most specifically. And that's a good thing. I think it's great. I think it's awesome, right? And that RFK is more radical than Bernie Sanders. How can you tell? Well, RFK has been canceled in ways that Bernie Sanders certainly hasn't been canceled. Bernie Sanders gives voice to a message that most Democrats believe about the power of big business and the need to protect working families, but he doesn't fight for it, right? He doesn't have any oomph behind it, and he's fully in line with U.S. foreign policy at this point. But Bernie Sanders, he is the poster child for certain economic populist messaging that hits home with a lot of Democrats. That is also something the Democratic Party has no interest in ever delivering on. They like to use Bernie in particular, kind of use AOC, but she doesn't even really talk that way anymore. They like to use them as rodeo clowns, but they are, they have no interest in implementing the Bernie Sanders policies. And Bernie Sanders himself, he's very good at the rhetoric, but you'll notice that, his campaign was purely about expanding the welfare state. There was not a single call for a nationalization of anything. There was no talk of property relations. It was simply, give people stuff and tax rich people more. No restructuring of the economy, no public control of any resources or anything. And certainly foreign policy was just standard, and they baited him over the fact that in the 80s, back in the 80s, he said stuff about Latin America and about the Soviet Union and stuff, but he's not, Bernie is just your standard, Democrat with a populistic economic message. He's kind of emphasized what used to be standard rhetoric for Democrats. It used to be, a big chunk of the Democratic Party were Southern populists who talked like Huey Long, and that's not the case anymore. And Bernie Sanders has kind of revived the economic populism that used to be, part of Democrat rhetoric. But the policies that he puts forward at the end of the day, he's not really going to fight for anything. And he will not say anything that goes against the mainstream media. The second mainstream media calls it a conspiracy theory. He goes along with it. Bernie Sanders is a huge disappointment in many, many, many ways. And this is what I've talked about the left, right? That's the whole thing my new book is about, the regime change industry, the woke left, Samantha Power, and the deep state. That's the point. That, leftism during the Cold War was transformed into a vehicle to spread instability. And I go into great detail. These are a lot of articles I've written over the years about this theme. And, the rainbow flags and the cruise missiles fly together and are on the same side. And that's what people in the third world are trying to resist. And that's what anti-imperialist countries, they're trying to resist Western capitalism, which, comes with a progressive liberal message, but also comes with bombs and devastation and economic looting. to maintain the dominance of Wall Street monopolies. So I want to thank you all for being here night after night after night. I want to thank you all. I really, really do appreciate you all for being here, being consistent. Recently on a stream, not on a stream, but on a CPI meeting, I was giving kind of rules for activism, about how to be an activist, and what it is that has enabled us to be activists. And I said that the 3 rules of activism are: 1, be consistent. Be there on a rainy day as well as a sunny day. Be there when it's easy. Be there when it's hard. Be there. Just prove that you are consistent and reliable, and keep doing it. There's a reason we have our CPI membership meeting every week at the same time. There's a reason church is on the same day on every week. There's a reason that, you have to be reliable, right? If you're serious about organizing, you got to be reliable. Second is you got to support your friends. This is something people don't understand, that, if somebody in your circles is under attack, you got to stand with them. If your friend is doing something important politically, you got to help them do it, right? You got to support your friends. That's a really important thing. It's not all about you, right? If you want people to be there for you, you got to be there for them. And it's not a trade. It's a matter of having a relationship. It's not like, oh, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. No, that's not a relationship. It's a matter of wanting your friend to do well, and they want you to do well. You got to be there for your friends. You got to support your friends. And the third thing is you have to constantly find new people. You have to constantly be exposing yourself to new people, constantly adjusting your messaging to reach new people, constantly finding ways that you can get access to new people, right? You can't be talking at the same people over and over and over again, right? You got to be expanding, right? You got to constantly be reaching new people. And those are the 3 rules of activism that I've laid out. And that's how CPI has operated. We are consistent. We support our friends, and we are constantly looking for new messaging angles, new ways to reach people, right? And if you can do those 3 things, I believe you can have a successful organization. But it requires doing those 3 things. It's not easy to do those 3 things, but you got to be there for your friends. You got to be consistent and reliable, and you've got to keep finding new people. All right. And if you can do those things, you can build an organization. And that is, people often say, how is it possible, right? It's just so unfair. Caleb, how can you have such an organization? How can you do this? Well, it's because I've been consistent and reliable, because I've supported my friends, and because I'm constantly looking to find new people, right? And that there are no shortcuts, right? And that's a cliche, but it's true. Any get rich quick scheme that you can think of doesn't actually work. And I've learned that the hard way. There have been a number of get rich quick schemes. I thought if I just, did this or I just did that, and it doesn't actually work that way. You just have to build the organization, right? And you have to do those 3 things, and you have to just keep doing them. And there's no big breakthrough, and there's no day that the big payout comes and all that. It doesn't work that way, right? Anything that looks like a get rich quick scheme is not real. Right. There can be boosts and there can be moments where you expand a little bit, but in reality, real growth as an organization is just a gradual process. And anything that looks like it's, it's just blowing up, it's huge, it isn't. And that is true for us, and it's true for anybody else, right? And people say, oh, with CPI, you were the center of attention when this was happening. Yeah, but what did that translate to? Right. And then people say, oh, well, it's, CPI, you're not getting as much attention as you used to. Well, more people are coming to our meetings. You should go to our Saturday meetings. There's more people participating in our Saturday meetings than ever before. And we're about to have the biggest event we've ever had. And, we 2 of our members spoke directly with Russian President Vladimir Putin last March. And, our book about Kamala Harris was on every channel. It's like, and so I'm like, how do you measure? How do you measure success? How do you measure that? Do you measure that in terms of membership? Do you measure that in terms of social media reach? Do you measure that in terms of income? Do you measure that in terms of name recognition? How do you measure success? Well, in theory, you should measure success by how much you've changed the world. And that remains to be seen, right? At the end of the day. But yeah, I will tell you, don't get taken in. Don't get taken in by fake things, right? social media isn't real. And if you blow up really big on social media, which I've done before, it doesn't really translate into a lot of real results. And if you're not doing well on social media, you can do amazingly well. Look, if you want to know how not real social media is, look at the Uhuru movement. The Uhuru movement is amazing. They have two huge buildings in St. Louis, Missouri, and in St. Petersburg, Florida. And they were at the center of a criminal case that was featured on Fox News. They did face-to-face interviews with Tucker Carlson. Their case was, it was a national news story in the New York Times. And if you watch, a typical YouTube video that they do, it's got what, 200 views. So what does that mean? Right? That means that, some guy who chugs soda is more important than Chairman O'Malley? I don't think so. Obviously not. But if you judge things by social media, that would be the case. There's a lot of things on social media that get a lot of attention that don't translate into anything in the real world. And there's a lot of people that are really important. Chairman O'Malley is really important. And if you look at the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru movement, and the federal court case they were involved in, and everything that happened with that, Chairman O'Malley was really important. But yet the social media footprint is not there. That shows you that these things are not real. You cannot judge things by their social media. And I would really like to get our organization to the point that that is not a big concern. Social media is useful. It's useful because you're listening to me right now. You all wouldn't be hearing me right now if I wasn't on social media. So it's a mechanism for me to constantly be in touch with you, right? It's not like we have to have an event that you come to. No, you can just tune into the YouTube channel and listen to me. That's great. That's awesome. It's a great vehicle for communication. It's a great vehicle for connecting with people, meeting new people, getting our ideas out there, but it's not the measurement. It doesn't really count. Paula White Cain, right? She's Donald Trump's spiritual advisor. I subscribe to her YouTube channel. She's Donald Trump's pastor. There are more people watching this stream right now than watch her sermons every week. Now, that's online. Now, there's obviously people in the pews, but she's Donald Trump's spiritual advisor, right? She's literally got an office in the White House. So how does social media? It doesn't mean anything. That's what I'm telling you. It doesn't mean anything. A lot of social media is, and there are a lot of things that get a huge amount of attention that don't deserve it. Like Shiloh Hendricks. Who cares, right? She, I guess the story is that some child was like trying to steal from her purse. And so she threw a racist temper tantrum. That's dumb. That's just dumb. That whole situation is dumb. And it's like, why does she deserve a huge amount of attention? She doesn't. Is Shiloh Hendricks an important figure in our American political discourse? No, she is not. But social media, because they're trying to incite racial division, because they want, to create a situation where people are emotionally triggered, they've decided to make her something big. And that shows you how it's all bullshit. And we, as an organization, a year ago, I said we needed to become a more outreach-oriented organization as CPI, and now we are. Every week, we come back and talk about all the outreach we've done. Now, got a lot on my plate before July, folks, and I need your help. I really do need your help. But we're building a real movement and a real organization, and we have a plan for what comes after. We're not just building an event, right? We're setting up shop in America. That's what has to happen. Is ultimately we need buildings, we need neighborhoods, we need turf. We've got plans. We've got big plans. But part of those big plans is filling up an auditorium in Chicago on July 12th. And I need your help with that. So if you can donate to the GoFundMe and relieve me of the economic anxiety of one thing and another thing, that would be great. That would be great. And there's a lot of calls I'm making this week. Thursday is going to be a big day. I'm talking to a lot of people on Thursday. Tomorrow, I'm going on Jamarl Thomas's show early tomorrow morning. So tune in for that. It's going to be good. That'll be at 8 tomorrow. I'll be on Jamarl Thomas's show. And then I'm headed into Manhattan and then I'm making some phone calls. And then Thursday I'm doing a lot. And there's a lot on my plate right now. And there's technical stuff I have to figure out. There's a lot on my plate right now. I'll just tell you that much. But we're winning. We're winning and we're working hard. And we're committed to this. We're committed to making it happen. And again, if we were plants, if we were frauds, they'd be making it a lot easier for us. And if we were going to sell out and give up, we would have done it a long time ago. We're in this for real. And we're not backing down and we're not giving up. And we're on a mission, and our mission is to have a successful convention on July 12th and a successful 7-day workshop with our crew of people, and and build some real relationships, and have a really powerful event, and have a really powerful and lay the foundations of a successful organization. And we're moving toward those goals, right? And it's not easy, but we are moving toward those goals, and we're giving people a sense of fulfillment, right? It needs to be done. Watch what I said in the opening remarks about Hamlet and about all of that. We're doing it. There's a lot that needs to be done between now and then. And, hey, a lot needs to happen, but yeah. So we're doing it. So I'm going to put on the closing music. And then from there, we will be back. I probably won't be on tomorrow night. There's a chance I'll be on tomorrow night. We have our recruitment meeting tomorrow evening for CPI members, our weekly recruitment check-in, and that's at 9. So there's a chance I might stream late tomorrow night, but we'll see. I'll be back Thursday, and I just keep streaming. But yeah, dare to struggle, dare to win.
New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.